There's a grade you can earn at a US university that technically counts as passing but could still stop you from graduating, and almost nobody warns you about it before you enroll. More than 1 million international students arrive at US colleges every year expecting a unified grading standard, and there isn't one. Every school sets its own rules on grading scales, on what counts as passing, on which grades transfer, and which ones disappear into thin air. If you don't know the difference, it can cost you time, money, and credits you already paid for. In this video, I'm going to walk you through everything you actually need to know about how US grades work, the letters, the numbers, the GPA, the credit system, and exactly where the system gets complicated. Let's start with the most basic question. Does the US grading system use numbers or letters? The honest answer is both. Most US schools use a letter grade that maps to a range on a 100-point numeric scale. The letter tells you where you stand at a glance. The number tells you exactly where within that range. What shows up in your transcript, though, depends entirely on your school. Some report only the letter, some report only the number, some include both. If your home institution or a future employer needs to evaluate your record, it's worth knowing which format your transcript uses before you need it. Now let's talk about the core system, the A through F scale. It runs from A, the highest, all the way down to F, which means the student did not pass the course. You'll notice the alphabet skips E. That's intentional. E was dropped because in older European grading systems, E stood for excellent, and that created obvious confusion. The F, on the other hand, is unambiguous. Here's how the letters map to numbers at most US schools. An A covers scores from 90 to 100, a B covers 80 to 89, a C covers 70 to 79, a D covers 60 to 69, and an F is anything below 60. But those letter grades don't just tell you how well you did in a class. Each letter also converts into a number on a separate scale, the GPA scale, which runs from 0 to 4.0. An A equals a 4.0, a B equals a 3.0, a C equals a 2.0, a D equals a 1.0, and an F is a 0. Your GPA is the average of all those point values across every course you take. So if you earn an A in one class and a C in another, your GPA for those two courses would be a 3.0, right in the middle. That single number follows you everywhere. It determines whether you qualify for scholarships, whether you stay in good academic standing, whether graduate schools take your application seriously, and in some cases, whether your student visa remains valid. In other words, your GPA can open doors or close them long after the class is over. We have a full guide on how GPA calculation works. I'll link it in the description below. Here's where it gets more precise. Many US schools don't just use 5-letter grades. They use a plus and minus system that gives each letter up to 3 variations. So instead of just an A, you can earn an A+, a straight A, or an A-. An A+ is the very top of the scale. An A- is just above the B+ threshold. The modifiers apply to every grade from A through D. Schools don't award an F+ or an F-. A failing grade is a failing grade. Here's what the extended scale looks like in numbers. Starting at the very top of the scale, we have the A+, which requires a score of 97 or higher, all the way up to 100. A straight A, the most common top grade, covers the range from 93 to 96. And an A-, still an excellent result, covers scores from 90 to 92. Next comes the B range, which represents solid, above average work. A B+ is awarded to scores between 87 and 89, just below the A range. A straight B covers the middle of this tier from 83 to 86, and a B- covers scores from 80 to 82. Still a good result, but approaching the lower end of the B tier. The C range represents average, satisfactory performance. A C+ covers scores from 77 to 79. A straight C covers 73 to 76. This is considered the baseline for acceptable academic work at most schools. And a C- covers scores from 70 to 72. Then we reach the D range, and this is where things get complicated, as we'll see in a moment. A D+ covers scores from 67 to 69, a straight D covers 63 to 66, and a D- covers scores from 60 to 62, the lowest grade that some schools will consider a passing mark. And finally, anything below 60 is an F, which is a failing grade. Now, and this is important, these cutoffs are not universal. Some schools set A+ as 96.5 and above, others at 98 and above. If the difference between two grades affects a scholarship, your academic standing, or transfer credit, that difference matters. Confirm the exact scale with your institution. Before we get into passing grades, which is honestly where the most consequential misunderstandings happen, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us what country's grading system did you come from, and what was the biggest surprise when you encountered the US system. Okay, This is a section that changes everything, so stay with me, because a passing grade in the US is not as clear as you think. At the high school level, a passing grade has traditionally been anything above an F, meaning a D- technically counts. But a growing number of high schools have raised that floor to a 70, which is a C-. This varies by district and by state. At the college and university level, it gets more complicated. A D- through D+, that's anything from 60 to 69, is a gray zone. And depending on the institution and the program, a grade in that range might do 5 very different things. 1, it might count as a passing grade for the course, but not towards your major. 2, it might be labeled unsatisfactory passing, which technically is not failing, but it's not useful either. 3, it might disqualify the credit from transferring to another institution. 4, it might trigger academic probation if it drops your GPA below the minimum threshold. And 5, in demanding programs like pre-med or engineering, a D in the wrong course might be outright unacceptable. For undergraduate work, a C- or above is the threshold that most schools treat as a solid passing grade. Anything in the D range should be treated with caution and verified directly with your academic advisor before you assume it counts. For international students specifically, a 65 earned at a U.S. university may not transfer back to your home institution at all. You could spend the money, you could spend this semester, and end up with nothing on your record to show for it. Verify transfer credit policies before you register for courses, not after. Let's talk about credits, because this is another area where the confusion is real and the consequences are concrete. Credits and units mean the same thing at U.S. schools. 1 credit hour corresponds to 1 hour of in-class instruction per week per semester. A 4-credit history course means 4 hours in the classroom each week. A 2-credit biology lab means 2 hours per week. That part is simple. Here's what catches students off guard. Credit hours only count classroom time. The widely used rule of thumb is that each in-class hour requires about 2 hours of outside work, readings, assignments, studying, and preparation. That 4-credit history course isn't 4 hours of work per week. It's closer to 12. 4 hours in class, 8 hours outside of it. Most US students carry 15 credits per semester. When you factor in study time, that works out to roughly 45 hours of academic work per week. That's a full-time job. You have to plan accordingly. And for graduation, most 4-year U.S. universities require 120 total credits to finish your degree. At 15 credits per semester across 8 semesters, that's exactly 120. That's why a 4-year degree is the standard framing. But changing majors, retaking courses, or carrying fewer credits per semester can all extend that timeline and extend what you'll pay. Here's the one thing I want you to take away from this. The system described in this video reflects common practice across U.S. colleges and universities, but common practice isn't universal. Grading scales, passing thresholds, credit requirements, and academic policies all vary by institution, sometimes by department, sometimes by program within the same institution. Before you make any academic decision, whether that's course selection, credit transfer, or graduation planning, confirm the details directly with your school's registrar or academic advisor. Don't assume. Ask. If you're an international student navigating the U.S. application or transfer process, there's a good chance you'll need certified translations of your academic documents at some point. Diplomas, transcripts, certificates. U.S. universities and government agencies require certified translations, and getting that right matters. That's exactly what we do at U.S. Language Services. We've worked with international students since 2018, and we make the process straightforward. The link to request a quote or place an order is in the description below. And if you found this video helpful, subscribe. We publish guides like this regularly, and the next one might be exactly what you need. We'll see you then.